but you can't go back into work and then put this into practice. You can't go back into the industry and practice what you have learned. That has now created a very big divide between the education industry and what the industry itself wants. If I could go back to why I think some of these issues happen within the industry, I'll go back to one very strategic point in the sense that when I was in Australia, I used to work in Australia, and I think coming from overseas markets, you could back me up with this. HR used to play a very much strategic role in building the organization. HR in Asia is still very infant. It's playing a very functional role in developing the organization. Capability development, we throw to HR and say it's their problem. It's no longer the leadership issue, it's no longer an organizational issue. This all comes back then to who do we bring in to the organization. I think talent acquisition is key in identifying the problem, or is key in defining the problem, but processes should not be put in place for the sake of having processes. Let it be assessment tools, succession planning, development, training. In the research we did, we found things were going into play for the sake of being there, not with a vision, not with a strategy. That, I think, is a very big concern in the Asian market. I think last month there was a sad article in the Star newspaper that's flashed out saying Malaysian student tops Cambridge Law. And we were all very excited reading about it, and the last paragraph it says he now works with the Singapore government. So things like this, we have to face up to the fact that if we don't buck up, if we as an industry decide not to play a role in the development of people, we will incapacitate the market. First, in regards to the comments we've been having, I always think there needs to be a synergy between both education and the industry. You never see companies like GE go and complain that the education groups are not doing what they're doing. It's always the ones that are in trouble that complain. So we have to buck up ourselves, and we need to say, let's not blame anybody, let us as businesses find solutions. And in terms of your question, Madan, I'd like to refer back. I was recently in a seminar in Singapore. I don't know if any one of you attended a Human Capital Summit in Singapore. The core of that entire summit was talking about authentic leadership. How developing people from the very beginning, not when they're 45, that has become a very important criteria in the organization. CEOs are understanding now that harnessing talent from the very beginning is becoming paramount to the success and sustainability of the organization. We recently, I go back to the research we did with a bank here. I'm sorry, I'm not in liberty to mention who the bank is, but the head of HR mentioned when she came in, she did a study of the organization and noticed most of the promotions, most of the people that were getting recommendations were above 45. And as you very well put it, Sam, the younger generations are very, very ambitious. 5 years into the organization, I already want to become the CEO. How do you manage that as an organization? How do you get these people ready to understand what it takes them to become an assistant manager first, and then a manager, and then all these things? Big organizations are already doing it, and this is nothing new. It's been happening since a very long time. So I like to say one small quote. It's not really relevant, but the Vice President of GE in that summit, John G. Rice, he said very nicely, "We all work hard anyway. Why not do what we love while working hard?"
So, we've seen the statistics, and it tells us that we have an opportunity to develop our local talent in Malaysia. I think we're all agreed on that. I think what is interesting, as everybody in this room will agree, that despite the fact that we have a gap in developing our local talent, we have a significant and a chronic shortage of it. And the fact is that if we don't get talent through our organization and up and running, we're going to lose market share. And I guess the question that's on everybody's mind is how do we address this situation? Because the fact of the matter is despite the potential improvements that we can have to our own talent here, is we need to be able to engage these young people. And we work in an industry that is a relatively young industry. We work in an industry that's predominated by the net geners who have a very short attention span and very, very high ambitions. They want to move very fast. For those of you here within the HR community that think you interview candidates, you're very much mistaken. They're interviewing you. It is a fact that Malaysia has a limited population. We're not going to change that. It is a fact that India and the Philippines are probably one of the largest exporters of talent in the world. We're not going to change that. So let's focus about what can we do, what strategies we can help the educational institutes, and we've heard that being talked about here, realign what the talent education is with what we need in our businesses. And that's a responsibility that we all carry. And I heard what Kaiser was saying earlier, who's driving the bus? Is it the government? Is it the private sector? Is it the educational institutes? And I can tell you, the only person that can drive the bus is the business.
It is on. Okay, there we go. I was going to turn it off. My name is Lance Richards. I'm the global practice leader for HR consulting for Kelly Outsourcing and Consulting. I'm based in Singapore, although our corporate headquarters is back in the U.S. The stuff that the information you've given us is fascinating, and it lines up with a lot of what we're seeing in our research, and in that the educational infrastructure that countries can deliver is becoming more and more critical as time goes by. McKinsey told us back in '99 that we were looking at a war for talent that might well go on for 50 years. No, I think the war is already over. The talent is won. We as employers are all on the back foot trying to put the right people in the right place. The challenge we've got, and your data backs this up, is that we have an educational infrastructure that is insufficiently sized to convert people into talent. There's not necessarily a people shortage. We've got people in a lot of corners of the world. It's having the talent that can come in and deliver what we need doing. And in a knowledge economy, that becomes even more critical. When I look at your bell curves, you're showing some of the same things that our research is showing, in that there are many, many places where we've got a small section to the far right of the bell curve where we're delivering terrific results in the different skills needed for knowledge economy. But in far too many places, we are still generating people, and it was in this morning's Wall Street Journal, as a matter of fact, about China. We're still generating far too many people who have got high level of competency in rote memorization, but they're unable to convert data into information. So we've got to come back in from an educational standpoint and look at what it is that we're driving. And this has to start at grade school. We got to start with, my daughter is in first grade. We got to start there. Don't worry so much about how well does she memorize. The question is, can she reason and think?